Progressive overload is one of the most important aspects of training. And when I actually started to prioritize it, it changed my training forever and the results I got forever. So in this video, I want to talk about five things, five-step process to actually progressively overload. So the first part of it is just the training part. And the training part, I want to talk about first, training with intensity. You need to train hard enough to actually be, if you want to progressively overload. If you don't train hard enough and you don't stimulate the muscle enough to create adaptation, then it's no use. If you do 5, 10 sets, or I don't care, 20 sets, but none of those sets is even close to failure, then you're not going to be able to progressively overload. You're not going to be able to make progress. To make progress, to make effective progress, you need to train to failure or very close to failure. So to total failure where you fail the last rep, or with at most 2 reps in reserve. So 2 reps in reserve just means that at the end of your set, you could have done a maximum of just 2 reps with good form, with the same form, but no more. And most people underestimate how hard training to failure is. And they think they train to failure when they don't. And I'm not saying this to bash you. Because for me, for months, I thought I was training to failure. When I discovered that training to failure was important, started doing it, but I wasn't really doing it. I thought I was doing it. I was training a little bit harder, but I wasn't even training close to failure. But I thought I was, because it was kind of painful, it was kind of hard. But I could push a lot harder. I had the potential to push a lot harder, but I wasn't. So you need to have humility and the ability to realize, yeah, training to failure is a skill that I can improve. And if I don't have the humility and the ability to realize that I'm not really trained to failure right now, then I'm not going to make progress. If you're not progressing, then it could be one of two things, or it could be many different things in your training. Of course, it isn't just one of two things, but a lot of times it could be that you're not training hard enough. I think it could be the reason why a lot of people, maybe including you, aren't making good progress because you just aren't training hard enough. And also that you're maybe doing too much volume. I think that's a mistake that a lot of people make. And those were true mistakes that I made. I was doing too much volume, and none of the sets I was performing was taking even close to failure. And that's why I stagnated. I didn't really make progress for months, even though I had the potential. But my training philosophy and the way I trained were just incorrect. So you need to train towards a failure, and you need to just understand that more volume doesn't equal to more gains. And in some situations, very often, reducing the amount of volume you do would actually be more effective for your training. Like I said, I'll just do 2 sets per exercises. I'll do around 10 sets. Yeah, I do only 10 sets per session. And yeah, it's since I've been doing this, I've made the most progress ever. I made more progress like this than I did when I was doing 20, 25 sets per session. Even when I was just doing 15 sets per session, or 12 to 15. Yeah, 12 is still good, but 15, 14 sets per session, I'll make more progress now with lower volume. I make the most progress ever with lower volume than I did with higher volume. So that's how I kind of understood that more volume doesn't equal to more gains. The second part of this process to progressively overload is the diet component of it. And I'm going to make it short. I'm not going to try to waste your time here. But when it comes to diet, understand that being in a caloric surplus is going to greatly increase, or really, it's going to increase the amount of muscle you can build and how fast you're going to make progress. But when you're maintaining or even cutting, don't expect to build muscle whilst cutting. Or maybe if you're a novice lifter and you're new to it, yeah, maybe you can build muscle whilst cutting. But it's unlikely. I don't have high expectations when it comes to build muscle whilst you're dieting, was trying to losing weight and build muscle at the same time. So getting leaner and build muscle at the same time. A lot of people talk about it. It's definitely not optimal. If you're still a novice lifter, maybe you can build some muscle whilst cutting. but it's definitely not in the most effective state to actually build and use muscle growth. So it would be better to at least bulk, so being a small caloric surplus, like a lean bulk. I'm not talking about a dirty bulk, but like a small caloric surplus where you gain like 1 to 1.5 kg per month. That would be, in my opinion, very effective. Or at what's actually at least better than cutting, it's just maintaining the weight that you currently have. So maybe if you're a novice lifter, you can maintain for like the first year, just maintain the weight you're currently at and just try to build muscle at that weight. It would be more effective to bulk, but you could do that, especially in the beginning, and get away with it with just maintaining. It also depends on your body fat percentage. So the lower your body fat percentage is, the harder it's going to be to build muscle whilst maintaining your weight. But if you have healthy, kind of okay, you're kind of an okay range, or you're kind of an okay body fat, so you're maybe at 14%, 15%, 16%. Yeah, especially as a novice athlete, you can probably still build pretty good muscle pretty fast with whilst maintaining without necessarily bulking. But bulking would always be more effective. It would always be the most effective way to say to build muscle. So I would recommend you bulk. Right now I'm cutting because I bulked for a long time, but I'm cutting just so I can go back to bulking. And right now, whilst I'm cutting, I'm not expecting to build muscle. I'm just trying to do my best. I just still train hard so that I can at least maintain the muscle that I currently have. But I don't have high expectations. I'm not trying to build muscle because I know it's very unlikely that I will build some muscle whilst cutting. But I'm trying to do my best to not lose any muscle whilst cutting. That's kind of how cutting kind of puts the muscle building process and the process of progressive overload. It kind of puts it on hold. So you need to be careful with how much you cut and how long and all those things. Third component is recovery. Recovery is a very important aspect of your training, and a lot of people don't really take it seriously. They don't really consider it that well. So first, in your training in general, you should make sure you don't do too much volume. I think, like I said before, it's probably a mistake that a lot of people make, doing too much volume, doing too many sets. Understand that more volume doesn't equal to more gains. And I've realized that quality is actually more important than quantity when it comes to strength training. So doing more doesn't equal to more gains. And in some cases, doing less could actually be more effective. I used to do 5 sets per exercises, and I would do 5 exercises per session. So I was doing 25 sets per session. And now I'm doing 10 sets per session. And I'm making literally 5 times more gains, 10 times more gains than I was at that time. And even when I was doing 15 sets per session, I still was making as much gains as I am now. So for me, reducing my volume, but making each set count, making each and every single set that I was doing, making it effective, making it better, improving the quality of every set. That's what made me just make more gains. So when I started prioritizing quality over quantity, that's when I started making extreme gains. So make sure you're not doing too much volume. Make sure you focus more on making the already existing volume that you're doing, making it more effective. And another part of recovery is just sleep. Sleep enough. Go to bed and sleep well. And it doesn't mean sleep for 8 hours a night, but sleeping for 8 hours a night doesn't mean you stay in bed for 8 hours. Staying in bed for 8 hours doesn't mean you slept for 8 hours. Yesterday, so I woke up at 4 a.m. today. Right now it's 5:17. Yesterday I went to bed at 6 p.m. literally. I go to bed very, very early because I know I won't fall asleep instantly. And would you want to know around what time I fell asleep? I fell asleep at around 9 p.m. I was in bed at 6 p.m. and I fell asleep around 9 p.m. 9:30 maybe. So of course, it's a special case there. Most of the time I actually fall asleep a lot faster. Most of the time it takes me like 30 minutes or maximum of 1 hour to fall asleep. But on some days, it takes me a lot longer to fall asleep. This night I slept for only around 7 to 6 hours probably. Because even when you fall asleep, it doesn't necessarily mean, okay, yeah, I fell asleep at 12 p.m. and I woke up at 8 a.m. So that means I slept for 8 hours. Even then, that's incorrect. You wake up more often than you think and during the night. It's just that you don't remember when you wake up because those are very brief periods and you're still very tired. But it's not like you get just 8 hours straight of uninterrupted sleep. There are some parts of your sleep that are more that are higher quality, some parts of your sleep that are less high quality, and there are periods during the night where you just wake up and then you fall back asleep and you forget that you woke up. Sometimes you even remember that you woke up during the night. So allocate more time to bed. I think that's the best tip I can give you when it comes to sleep and recovery. Allocate more time to bed. If you were to allocate like 9 hours to bed or maybe 10 hours to bed, if you really want to get your 8 hours, at least nine or at least bare minimum 8.5. But just know if you allocate 8.5 hours to bed, you're probably not going to get 8 hours of sleep. Definitely not going to get 8 hours of sleep. Maybe if you have like a crazy world class level of sleep efficiency, but you probably don't. I don't really think there's actually someone who can get to bed, who can stay in bed for 8.5 hours and get 8 hours of sleep. That's some crazy level of sleep efficiency. And another aspect, last tip I can give you for recovery and for sleep: sleep in a dark room. I literally have like those things, those sleep masks when I sleep, and that drastically helps me to just stay in the darkness while I'm sleeping. And I'll even close my covers when I go to sleep, because when I go to sleep, like I said, I go to sleep at 6 p.m. It's still, especially during the summertime, it isn't dark outside. There's still light outside, a lot of light. So that's why I close my curtains and I put on my sleep mask. It drastically helps me with my sleep. Third aspect, the fourth step of to progressive overload is double progression. So now I've talked kind of the things you need to do to make sure you can progressive overload. Now I'm going to talk about two ways to progressive overload. So the things I talked about beforehand were really about what you can do to actually make progressive overload possible. Now I'm going to talk about how, kind of the framework to progressive overload. First thing is double progression. Double progression just means you progress both in reps and weights. So you have a rep range. So now you're training and you have a rep range. Maybe we're going to take an example for bench press. Let's say last session. So you have a rep range that's between 6 and 8 reps. Last session you did 50 kgs for 6 reps. If you do everything correctly, you train hard enough, you ate enough, you recovered well, and now maybe 2 3 days later you come back, you train chest again and you do bench press again. This time you should be able to do 50 reps, 50 kg for 7 reps. And you still train hard enough, and then you eat enough again, and you go sleep well, and then 3 days ago you come back, or 2 days ago you come back and you train chest again, and you do bench press again, and this time you do 8 reps. All good. Your rep range is between 6 and 8 reps. So next session, after you reach 8 reps, next session, you should add 5 kilograms or maybe 2.5 kilograms to your bench press, and then go back down to 6 reps. So you just add enough weight so you can go back to 6 reps. And then again, you start again slowly increasing as from session to session, or maybe from week to week, to the point where you reach 8 reps with 55 or 52.5 kgs. And then you reach the upper end of your rep range again, and then you add weight so you can go back down to the lower end of your rep range. That's pretty much the progression. And your rep range can be anything between 5 and 30 reps. It can be 6 to 8, it can be 5 to 7, it can be 7 to 9, it can be 8 to 10, it can be 8 to 12, it can be 12 to 15, it can be 10 to 15, it can be 15 to 18, it can be 15 to 20, it can be 18 to 20, it can be 18 to 22, it can be 22 to 25, it can be 25 to 28, it can be 28 to 30, whatever you prefer. And it can vary from exercise to exercise. It doesn't have to be the same for every exercise you do. Some exercises you may find that a 12 to 15 rep range works best. And for others, you may find that a 6 to 8 rep range works best for you. So it can very much vary from exercise to exercise. It doesn't have to be the same for every exercise you do. And the last thing I want to talk about, the fifth step, is progressing on form. So on some exercises, especially if you're kind of advanced a little bit, it may be better to immediately focus on progressing on form. And even so, for example, I want to talk about, imagine you start doing the Romanian, the stiff-legged deadlift for the first time. That exercise, the technique is very complicated. To grasp the technique, to grasp the movement, it takes some time and it takes some practice. In the beginning, if you don't want to injure your spine, I wouldn't recommend you to try to progress on reps and weights instantly. I would recommend you to train with lower weights, to not even go close to failure, and really practice your form. Focus on improving your form, focus on making your form better. Because the movement is very complicated. You have to hip hinge, it's kind of tricky, especially when you train with higher weights. And you may not really, you may run your back a little bit. So in the beginning, progressing on weights and reps isn't a good idea, but progressing on your form would be pretty good. Making sure you improve your form every session you just make your form a little bit better. Every session you focus on a certain cue. That would be a way more effective way to go about it. To progress on form. And on some exercises don't have such like amazing overload potential. So you progress for a while and then you kind of stagnate on them. Maybe you should change the exercise, but sometimes it would be good to just find ways to make the form more difficult. Find a way to gain more out of less weight. Make the exercise harder to perform. Maybe you control the eccentric even more on that exercise, so you do an extra slow eccentric, or maybe you do something just make the exercise harder in general. Sometimes it's actually progressing in your form can actually help you break the plateaus. Just making the form a little bit, changing the form a little bit to make the exercise a little bit harder or a little bit different can help. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. Hope you found this video valuable. If you're interested in my fitness coaching, click the first thing in the description. Don't run away from discomfort. Chase it.